the people that come to my, I don't want to list your name for some reason because I feel like it's not it's not a good idea to list someone's name. But you know who you are when you come in here. If you come in here, can you let me know whether you can hear me or not the AirPods? Because I hate to sit here and talk for 20 minutes or more. Come to find out, you can't hear me. So I'm answering some questions. These came as a result of the video that I did yesterday, I think. They've all dropped in my mailbox. Actually, one of them was a conversation I had with somebody. The other ones dropped into my mailbox, and they seem to be from people who are not yet in the members forum, because I think a lot of these questions get answered in the members area. I don't mind answering them both places. But if you come into the members area, you will get a much bigger, more robust download on what it is we're talking about here. Well, one of the questions is from someone, not only what it is we're talking about, but you'll learn how to do it. That's the key. And you won't have so many questions if you just go to the members area. We're basically spoon feeding this to people. Like, I'm giving it away almost for free. You pay I think it's like $30 a month for the lowest tier. And if that's all you ever want to pay, that's all you pay. And all that does is support to help me move away from sessions more, to be more available for you on the forum. So part of transparency is just being financially transparent with you, what the forum is all about. The forum started as a way for me to connect and support people doing the deep somatic work. Because going through the healing of my own spine pain, it had all these different ebbs and flows and nooks and crannies, and had its own trajectory. And being supported and understanding and having the context about what was happening to me was part of the healing process. Not just the actual healing, but the understanding and the support. Through this process of healing, or I would say any process of healing that gets to the root of issues like trauma, emotional issues, will be challenging. There's no way that it wouldn't be. So we created the forum to support people in that, who are doing that work, and that's exactly what it has become. And before that, I was doing sessions with people virtually every day, all day. I've had to pull back on those sessions in order to meet people in the members area. And by meeting people in the members area, I can give one-on-one, or not one-on-one, but direct contact, like groups every day. I'm meeting with people. Individuals are in the middle of a practice, and they're doing the Kilobi inquiries, and then they're coming to these meetings and asking questions. And then I answer the questions to show them how to be more skillful with it and to reach those areas that are blocking them. And they come back and they get more suggestions. It's an interesting vibe. It's not something that I've ever been involved with before, to be sort of helping people like in a very interactive way, ongoingly. Is that a word? Ongoingly, meaning regularly. So, yes, for the financial transparency, I'm trying to move away from sessions. So we've placed a little fee on the members area, which helps support me to get away from sessions to support more people in a group forum. And that's what's happening, is the group forum is there's a lot of information being shared, a lot of insight and transmission. And I want to make myself available for that and still do sessions. Wow, that was a lot. But, look, transparency is good. So that's exactly what's going on. What I just told you, we're not hiding anything. Literally, that's what's going on. It feels very good to just be transparent and say, this is what we're doing, and this is the financial stuff behind it. Okay, so yeah, some good questions. I think the video yesterday, I don't remember the topic or the title of it, sparked some conversation. Okay, here's the first question. This person was watching my video. They've been trying, well, they go on and on about trying to do the emotional repression work on anger, KI style, and not being able to do it. Like not being able to there's no results happening. So I'm just going to take a little bit of the question here. I've been trying to access anger. I don't get tons of relief. Also, anger doesn't come up. My pain stays roughly the same. Okay, it's probably because you're not doing it the way that we designed it. Like, this is such an interesting place to be, where I'm explaining to people that there's a particular way to inquire into repression. It Think about it, it's repression. So all your life it has been hiding from you. It's been repressed. It's a clever mechanism. It isn't going to just pop up because we want it to. It isn't going to show itself or come up in awareness because we've decided that we don't want to repress anymore. It's a mechanism that is stubbornly out of reach, you can't see it. So a big part of this work, and I have a sense this person isn't doing this, a big part of this work is bringing up the thoughts, the commands that say, I don't want to feel this or I don't want to feel that. It's not just that we're resisting emotions when they arise. There's literally an ongoing story, like a very strong, what I call a repression barrier in the mind, the unconscious mind, that is holding energy back. And then that energy is held in places of the body. To me, that goes far beyond resistance. It's one thing when we're feeling something or we don't want to feel something that's under the surface or right on the surface. This is, as far as I can tell, repression is an ongoing, habitual, lifelong habit. And it's going on under the radar constantly. And I don't know that everybody understands it that way, because I do see some questions about, isn't this the same as resistance? I suppose you could say yes, in the sense that if we resist the feeling of anger and we tuck it down or push it down, but the word repression speaks to it, and the science behind it speaks to it in a better way. I find resistance and repression to be different, even though they're related. Repression is a mechanism of the personality for survival. Um, and again, in order to repress, it isn't just about being against something. It's not just about like, oh, I resist this because it doesn't feel good. No, this repression mechanism in the mind, if you haven't discovered this yet, is a powerful, persistent set of commands that are going on in the unconscious. They're happening in your body right now. I can pretty much promise you. If you're on the spiritual search and you've suffered any at all, chances are this is what's going on. And here's the thing, when you get quiet, you're not going to hear it. So this is the thing you have to know. Getting quiet doesn't just allow you to hear the mind that has decided to hold back anger and not express it throughout a lifetime. You're not going to hear that just by being quiet in awareness. So you've got to hear that part first. Because I sat for 2 years with the chronic pain in quietness because my experience is quiet, like utterly quiet. Stillness, quiet. And nothing was detected other than pain. Nothing. So when you're sharing with me that you're still in pain and that's not changing, and you're not seeing the command to repress anger coming up, then that tells me that the repression is still there. You haven't tapped into it. In other words, there's a set of commands in your unconscious mind that are there. They are governing how you interact with people. They are governing, or they are involved in the governing of whether you express an emotion or you hold an emotion back, whether you set a boundary with a friend or you don't set a boundary, whether you speak up to your mother and say, Mom, don't do that anymore, or express your needs and wants or whatever. It's both frustrating and challenging to come on to YouTube answering these questions all the time because I feel like I'm always answering them. And I feel like I'm repeating myself. And I know that I am. At the same time, yesterday sparked all these questions. So let me answer this one and clear it up. If you send me a question, if you're not in the members area, can you at least give me your methodology or like, can you write out exactly what it is you're doing when you say you're doing anger repression work? If you just say, I'm doing it and it's not working, then I don't know what your process is. So I can't tell you if what you're doing is telling me. I'm most interested in your process when you email me. Like, in other words, how do you and do you get commands to come into awareness, the commands to repress anger? Have you seen those in awareness? What is your method by which you bring that up into awareness? And then what do you do when you bring it up? If you're going to share with me that you've been doing anger repression work, those are the questions that I'm going to ask you. Because this is what I've learned from repression work is that it's unconscious. So if you're quiet, what I heard in this question is the person is just sort of sitting in a meditative quietness and going to certain places that would conjure up anger, but then trying to feel the anger. This is how the email reads to me. And I just don't think it works that way with repression. It's not like you can sit in quietness and pull the right memories up and finally feel the emotions that you repressed around that. Because if repression would give itself up so easily, it wouldn't work. If we could just like call it out so easily and then it just ends right there, it just not doesn't work that way. It's much more persistent. So first of all, resting in quiet meditative awareness. I'm going to go on record at this point and say, you are not going to uproot a repression that way, most likely. Actually, let me put a challenge out there to anyone out there who has chronic pain or, let's stick with chronic pain. Can you come out of anger repression and heal that pain just by sitting in awareness? Now, there's two parts of that. Come out of repression and heal the pain because the two things are linked. I'm actually putting that a challenge out there because I keep saying I don't think that's going to work because it didn't work for me. But I also want to hold open the possibility that somebody out there has learned how. I still see how it's possible to sit in meditative awareness and somehow uproot anger repression stored in the body without going to the unconscious mind, without conjuring up the unconscious mind in inquiry. I'll put that challenge out there for the rest of you who are interested in how I did this or how this is done. I'm not going to go over it again today. I'm just going to say a few things. The emotion, the contraction of the pain in your body, if it's not physical, it's most likely emotional. There's strong science behind it. It's not Scott Gillespie talking. Go read the science. Arm yourself with information about your body and what science is saying about repression. I would definitely do that, especially if you are getting older or have mental health or physical health issues. You definitely go arm yourself with that science and then come back to us and listen to what we're saying about repression. Is that it doesn't respond in meditation, just sitting. It doesn't just show up by being present. This whole thing about enlightenment, where you just wake up and everything gets seen, is true, not with repression. Because that is designed not to get seen. And some forms of trauma don't ever get seen because these are repressed. This is repressed unconscious material. So awakening to awareness won't do it. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that. If I'd like to meet the person who is able to pull up these commands, these repression commands, just by sitting in awareness, because I'm very interested in that. Because here's how I did it. I used an inquiry that specifically provoked up the unconscious thought that I don't want to feel and express anger. So once I did that, And I learned how to bring that up. I just kept it in awareness. And through that, it sounds so easy. It was packed full of challenges. But over time, the pain left from that. Now, the operative word there is that I pulled up unconscious commands to repress anger. So if you're sitting in meditation or you're doing any other practice and you're not seeing a lot of or hearing a lot of commands come up that say, no, I don't want to feel and express anger, then you're not tapping, as far as I'm concerned, you're not tapping into that repression. Through the last year, people have emailed me and said, okay, so I'm getting angry. I'm okay, good. You're getting angry. Like you're trying to tap into the anger. So they'll say they're sitting on a mat, and again, they're envisioning things that make them angry, and they're bringing the anger to the surface. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about anger that's further repressed than that. I'm not talking about anger that's accessible. Every now and then in meditation or a retreat, obviously, you tap into something, some old anger, and then you feel it, maybe express it and release it. Of course, that can happen spontaneously. And it does. By and large, I'm not talking about that at all. I'm talking about anger that doesn't want to come up at all, like under any circumstances. Anger for which there's a strong command to keep it down, and that command is buried in the quietness. It's buried. And so you may not hear it in your awareness, you may not see the command, but you know that pain, that tightness in your heart, that, how it throbs, how it continues to bother you, and you're paying attention to it a lot because it's uncomfortable. That's it. And that is contains a very quiet, it's actually very loud, but until you discover it, it remains completely quiet. Once you discover it, you can see how loud it is. It's loud and persistent. So make no mistake about it, the repression work that I'm talking about would require, it would involve bringing that command up because the way I see the mind-body connection, there's no way to bring up just anger as if it's completely divorced from the mind, or to think of things like that as if the body could just be by itself without mind, or the mind could just be by itself without the correlation of the emotion of the body. So when you're going into repression and you're thinking that you're just going to unearth something in the body as if it's just existing there by itself, independent of the mind, and you're going to blow it open from awareness, that misunderstands the mind-body connection. And I think this is why I get so many questions on contractions and pain that are stubborn, because people are doing just that. They're forgetting or not understanding that, of course, the mind is involved in repressing emotion, and that mechanism is unconscious, like not even available to you in awareness. Okay, did I beat that dead horse enough so that I'm just trying to help others who are at home trying to replicate what I did, but they need a lot of help. And so I'm just going to invite you again to the members area because every day I'm clarifying this for people and helping them. And we're learning. Like we have now basically a community that's a laboratory where people are doing this work and they're sharing it. And they can verify for themselves that when their pain gets less or contraction gets less, it's because they made contact with these thoughts that are unconscious. So it's not just me. Okay. Here's a question. It was a very short one, too. It was really earnest. It's like, okay, doing repression work on chronic pain. Scott, how often, how, and for how long should I do it? Well, first of all, that assumes that you're doing it skillfully. So let's go back to the first question is, are you doing it in the way that we suggest, the way that it's actually skillful? So assuming that you're doing that, because you didn't have any questions on that, During the time that I had chronic pain, I was doing at least 30 minutes a day of sitting down and running through repressions and traumas directly connected to the pain. And then throughout the day, I would come back to inquiry whenever the pain would flare up, because the flaring up of the pain signal indicated something coming to the surface. What you might be termed, as science terms it, stress. But when you look deeper into the stress that's coming up, creating more pain, right below the surface, I saw commands were active. Repression was active under an active pain signal. Trauma was becoming active when the pain signal was increasing. So the pain signal became my teacher. Whenever the pain signal ramped up, it was like a teacher saying, you need to look at something. It's coming to the surface, go look at it. And so I didn't have to have a teacher there telling me the pain signal. I learned what it was trying to tell me is stop ignoring something. Stop ignoring anger. Stop ignoring certain things that happen to you. Address these things and the pain signal will go away. And that's exactly what happened. So every day for 30 minutes in a sitting, and then throughout the day, whenever the pain signal would amp up. If yours is a contraction, it's when the contraction increases. Through the course of a day, you get more anxious, or something happens and you can feel that area more. That's like telling you, that's your teacher. It's saying something was right on the surface. And when you first go in, you're not going to see it. You might feel it. You might see a couple of thoughts. But when I say under the surface, I mean that. So the contraction flaring up, the pain increasing. If you go quiet, this is how I think people miss this. If they go into meditation or awareness right then, they might just notice a couple of thoughts, but mainly just the sensation acting up. And so sometimes they stay there, right? Stay there just resting with the sensation, which can be nice because it soothes the sensation. You rest and allow it. It's welcoming it. It's very sweet and loving way to be with it. But it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't. So you're resting with it and it just doesn't move. And you close your eyes and you go into meditation and it's quiet, except for a few thoughts, and then you're stuck with this contraction of the pain. At this point is when, if I were you, I'd be interested in KI, because we just broke through that barrier, basically. This is all just talk, hear me out, but that place in which you get quiet and all you notice is the pain or the contraction and you can't see anything else, we broke through that. So there's actually a lot of activity going on there. We've learned how to break through that silence of repression there and hear what's going on at that level. So if you're not hearing what's going on in the form of, I can't express fear, I can't express anger, I can't show this, I can't show that, and a number of other trauma-based memories, that's what's under that surface there. That's what we've discovered. So I hope that helps you, because if you're doing this process at home and you're just sitting quietly and you haven't tapped into that series of commands, I don't see how it's going to be skillful. Here's a question. Someone who obviously reads the trauma research. Scott, please explain your trauma and repression commands. Is a trauma response different than a trauma command? I don't think you'll find the word command in any of the literature. I think it's a term I came up with because the literature, parts of it didn't resonate with me. Some of the literature basically says trauma comes up, for example, as a reaction. Somebody says something or some event happens that's similar to something that happened to you before, and the mind and body remembers the trigger and responds. So there's a response to a traumatic event. And I guess you could even say that once the event is over, there are other trauma responses. the body responds to the trauma being imprinted. There's also a response to triggers from trauma. So if you have trauma in your system and you get triggered again, that's often considered like a trauma response. You're responding from your trauma. It's that simple, although the research goes into it in much greater detail than that. Command is different. The researchers are saying that the first is this initial reaction, which might be increased heartbeat, nervous system, increasing in energy or intensity, sweating, something, feeling something here or there. Like that's the reaction. But what's going on underneath the reaction is what we became interested in here in this work. So there's the reaction, but you can't really do much with the reaction because, as the researchers say, at first glance, it doesn't come with any memories of the trauma. It comes as a reaction to something going on. It's like you don't see the programming. If you're being sort of re-traumatized with something, you don't always see the roots of it. Does that make sense? You just see a current trigger. Okay, so these reactions, when you go into inquiry, these reactions actually are just the tip of the iceberg. Beyond the reaction, these commands are operating unconsciously. So commands in terms of trauma are not just like trauma responses, they are commands to do or not do something that you learn during a traumatic event or relationship. So imagine being with dad when you're a kid and he gets really angry and inside your system you freeze and then the thought says run and hide. And a lot of this goes on way below the radar. You may not have a conscious memory of having those thoughts, but that's what's happening because we're only human animals. We're animals and we have to survive. And in the face of something like that, you learn, how do I survive? Run, hide, fight, hold back anger, right? Hold back certain things to survive. These commands are really important because they get embedded into our somatic experience. And they are commands to do or not do something. It's not just a response of some kind to trauma, it's a command to survive. Now, these commands, apparently, and I'm not even tracking research when I say this, I'm tracking my direct experience with people. These commands not only govern our relationships after the original trauma, they also accumulate apparently in our body, creating pain or contraction or illness, according to science. So we should be discovering these now, is my point, is if this is what's happening, so let's talk about this. These commands happen as a child where you download an imprint that in order to survive, you have to run, get away, stop, something, hold back. And then those govern our relationships, first of all. So if you notice in your past relationships, after initial trauma, you probably engaged in some of the similar behavior in those relationships by running, hiding, follow me, or not trusting people, and maybe not even knowing why exactly. But all the programs that you see operating in relationship can essentially, not all of them, but many of them, can be traced back to what happened to you and during what happened to you. Because you literally learn how to survive with these commands. And so the body imprinted with these commands. And so when something happens in relationship, your body is already imprinted with the response of how to respond to that. And the command comes up in that. Even if you're not aware of the command, it's very unconscious. But in the middle of an argument, it would be something like run or fight or stop or don't. Or it doesn't have to be in an argument. Like these things are governing our relationships. Is what we're finding. And because when we go into relationship and inquiry, when we see triggers happening, we start to see these commands and we're learning how to pull them up and not let them remain unconscious. Now, again, not only do the commands affect us in relationship, but They seem to be involved in the manifestation of things like chronic pain and perhaps illness. It would make sense. But also body contraction, samskaras. Think about it. If your body holds commands to run or hide or fight or whatever else, or hold back, it's the science says that that stays there forever. That those imprints are literally locked into place until something neutralizes that trauma. So how can you then turn a blind eye to that, knowing that science says that's in there forever? So what happened to you is imprinted those commands forever until you die, unless something neutralizes them. We could just sort of bypass them and say, okay, let them be there, except that they scientifically discovered the suffering. They've actually mapped it out. It's not just spiritual woo-woo anymore. So if you've got these commands in your system, how can you not deal with that on the path of are governing your relationships and behind these areas of the body that are holding energy? Very specifically, I found those commands. Those were the commands. Bringing those into awareness is what healed my pain. So, of course, going to keep talking about them. Almost everybody who comes to the work asks the question, how do I find trauma commands? That's how unconscious they are. Like, people don't come to the work saying, hey, here's my list of my 5 trauma commands, because they don't even know how to discover them. I didn't either. So they have to learn how to discover them first. And then once you discover them, you can work with them. Oh, and by the way, don't believe me. Everything that I'm saying can be verified in your own experience, like literally everything. So there's no reason to believe me. This is not about belief, just listen. And if something resonates, go do the work and then verify it for yourself. This is an interesting question. So, from a lady, my aunt has stenosis. Where is your condition now, Scott? Is this a permanent healing? Well, there's more to that one. Stenosis is the condition that I had. Is this a permanent healing? I can't know that. I can't know what the future brings. But my condition now is doing something that it shouldn't be doing, which is healing. I don't know another person with spinal stenosis. And I've searched, and if you're out there, I'd love to meet you. Because most of the people that I meet with this particular condition get at least, they stay at least the same or some mild relief at best from drugs. A lot of people have it getting worse. It's very bizarre to have in my body the stenosis. I've had that in my body and to literally watch it coming undone. All because of, again, making contact with these commands. So, where's my condition now is that I have no pain. No pain. And not only no pain, the pressure from the pinch of, if you know what spinal stenosis is, it pinches on the spinal cord. That I don't feel anymore, which I would imagine is unheard of. Because even people who do well with this, how are they going to get the pinch done? Pinch, at best, maybe they're dealing with the inflammation or something. Here, even the pinch has become undone, which is incredibly wonderful to feel that when you think that your spinal cord is going to be pinched forever, and then it just starts to come undone like that. This is why I get on YouTube every day or video. see what else we got here. I don't know if I want to get into this. Hmm. Should I get into this? Someone's asking about medications. So they're taking painkillers for a serious chronic pain. And they're basically saying that the painkillers make it worse, although it's the only thing that is working. So I understand that. It makes it worse and it works. That sounds hypocritical or paradoxical, but it isn't, because you get relief from painkillers, or I did, or other medications, but it's short lived. And the craving for the medication, there's science behind this too, studies. The craving for the medication, if you take it regularly, actually can make the pain worse. As if it wasn't bad enough to have chronic pain. Then you have to hear that. The person is talking about not being able to get enough meds from their doctor. Of the heroin epidemic, when they go to the doctor is skimpy on pain meds. They don't want to get in trouble. So it was overprescribing meds in the 90s that resulted eventually in the heroin epidemic. And then there became this wave of underprescribing for people with legitimate pain, not getting enough meds. I dealt with the same issue. I'm not a doctor, so I can't give any kind of advice like that. But I went so far with the responsible use of medication during my chronic pain, and I understood why, but I wanted to make sure that my doctor understood exactly how I was taking the medication, um, so that he understood I was taking it responsibly and would not underprescribe. I went so far. This is a true story. I still have the app. And the app is an interface between patients and doctors. I may release it someday, which allows the doctor to see everything, every medication, down to the last pill that a patient is taking in real time, a database that shows it, and that will refill those things if they're taken responsibly as prescribed, and will not refill, and really tracks everything, including even your pain level. The reason I created that app is because I see the problem is pain is still a thing for people. And even if they come into this work and they begin the healing process, still it takes a while. And people need sometimes medication. And I saw that need, and I saw that I needed the medication, but I also understood that the doctors had issues. So I created that app because I was inspired by it. I was inspired by the fact that people are suffering and they don't have access to meds. There's nothing much I can tell you about that. That's bigger than mindfulness. I know it's something that we have to deal with in our world, social, political stuff. Well, I think that's probably one of the reasons I became so motivated to heal the pain, was understanding that in this world it is difficult to manage it for different reasons. And one of them is the underprescribing of meds. I think when I first started to toy around with the idea that perhaps the pain could heal, I just started toying around with that idea. I think, like so many people, I didn't understand that process. So I thought, well, I'm already living as awareness. So I'm just going to be in awareness with it. And somehow shining the light of awareness on the pain or the area will just miraculously heal it. done that? It's so innocent to think that that might work. I'm not even saying it doesn't work sometimes, but what if? What if that approach is just wrong? Here's what I noticed is when I was just resting with the sensation, again, I'll leave you with this. It was quiet. I didn't see a lot of thoughts. Just felt a lot of pain. So it was literally like witnessing something that's completely deceptive. It's like, there it is. And there aren't any thoughts. And I hear people say this all the time. Now, like, Scott, I don't hear any thoughts with my pain. Of course you don't, because they're repressed. They're unconscious, right? So that's what I experienced for 2 years. Nothing, really, very little. Of course, I would do inquiry every now and then, and I'd see a couple of stories coming in and out. For the most part, when I rested with it, it was quiet. Are you doing that? Are because you've been told, or teachers have suggested it, or therapists. Coming down to feel directly is like a really powerful pointer. If it's something that's actually showing itself, but if you're coming down to pain or contraction, and the emotions or the energy in that isn't even showing itself, what do you do then? I see people like really making friends with their pain because they don't know anything else to do with it. Like, so they're just being present with it and loving it because they don't know another way. That's a good start, but that's kind of all that you're left to do that when you don't have any other skills, right? You just rest and allow, or maybe your skill just extends to like listening, just in case something comes up in the mind. What if? What if all this stuff isn't going to show itself to you in awareness, and you have to actually provoke it up in order to heal? If that makes sense, if anything that I'm saying makes sense, come join us in the members area. Killer Bee members area is a site that we've created that kind of looks like Facebook, but it's not. And it's our own little world. And people are doing the work there. And there's a lot of inspiration. Like people are actually sharing their art, their music, just being themselves. I think that's one of the things about the forum because we're dealing with repression. Um, People are yearning to just be themselves, whether it ends up being spiritual or not, just being themselves and being in a place where it's safe to be yourself, including safe to share your pain and not feeling like you're going to get reprimanded. Like, oh, that's ego. Rest is your true nature. No. Um, our humanness is also welcome here.